Dear guests, the next panel discussion is Cyprus and the EuroMed region, diplomacy, trade, and security in a region of shifting balances. Please take your seat while our speakers prepare for the panel.
This is the first panel of the day, and we are happy to discuss the theme on Cyprus and the EuroMed region, diplomacy, trade, and security in a region of shifting balances. My name is Dr. Petros Petrikkos. I'll be your moderator for today. And allow me to proceed with a brief introduction of our panel. From left to right, we have Michael Tatham, who is the British High Commissioner to the Republic of Cyprus. He assumed the role in November 2024. Previously, he was the delivery director for the European Political Community Summit hosted by the UK in July 2024. Over the span of his career, he has completed a number of diplomatic postings, including as the UK's Deputy Head of Mission in Washington, D.C. from 2018 to 2022, and as British Ambassador to Bosnia-Herzegovina from 2008 to 2011. Next up, we have Ilkay Demirdag, who is a seasoned investor, board member, and board advisor with over 20 years of global leadership across private equity, venture capital, corporate finance, investor relations, sustainability, and impact investments. She is the co-founder of Energy Shift Capital, which is a trust-based investment platform connecting vetted investors with screen Series A and B energy transition scale-ups across the EU and the US. Next, we have Nvard Chalikyan, who is a research fellow at the Applied Policy Research Institute, APRI, based in Yerevan, Armenia. Her current research focus is on the geopolitics of the South Caucasus, as well as Armenia's relations with India. She is heading the India-Armenia track and is also an international relations expert with 10 years of professional experience in the field. She holds an MPhil in international relations from the University of Cambridge and a Master of Arts from the American University of Armenia. And last but not least, we have Dorothée Schmid, who is the head of the Middle East Turkey program at IFRI, the French leading think tank doing international relations in Paris. She is an expert on Mediterranean and Turkey issues. She also holds a diploma in public management from Sciences Po in Paris and a PhD in political science from Panthéon-Sorbonne University, when she started her career at IFRI following EuroMed matters. And 10 years ago, she took charge of the MENA program, and she also started and developed IFRI's contemporary Turkey program in 2008. Dear all, we have a very rich panel, and I'm glad to be part of it. Our speakers are experts in their line of field, and allow me to begin with an opening question addressed to the panel as a whole. I'm going to give each speaker from left to right the time to respond to this opening question, which is as follows. What is the single most consequential shift today for the EuroMed, for Cyprus and beyond, and why do you think that is the case? Let us begin with the High Commissioner.
Thank you very much. I always get nervous when people describe me as an expert. If you'll allow me, moderator, I just want to begin by saying that when I came in this morning, several people very kindly expressed sympathies with me because of the terrible attack on a synagogue in the UK yesterday on the holy day of Yom Kippur. This was a horrific anti-Semitic attack, which obviously everyone in the UK condemns utterly, and I think it's very important that we stand in solidarity with Jewish communities in the UK and worldwide, what will be a very painful moment for them. To turn to your question, so the Eastern Mediterranean, to state the obvious, is a really important strategic region, politically, economically, in terms of energy and transport routes. An important region, but also a region that has been marked by very significant instability and turbulence over recent years. So when you're talking about the shift that we would like to see in the UK, it's a shift from instability to stability, a shift that allows us to do more to explore the opportunities in the region rather than constantly be tackling the problems and the challenges. What does that mean in practice? I mean, the two priorities, I guess, that I would highlight. One is Gaza, but the UK is very clear that the immediate steps that are needed there are a ceasefire, the immediate release of hostages, and the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza. We welcome the recent US plan, which we hope can offer a pathway towards those goals. In the longer term, we think that enduring stability requires there to be a political pathway to a two-state solution. So I think that's one important area. The other area that I would mention is Syria, which has been through a long period, more than a decade of conflict and humanitarian suffering. I think we now have a chance to embed stability in Syria. So we are very supportive of that goal and supportive of an inclusive political transition in Syria. The final thing I would say, because we're here in Nicosia, is Cyprus. The UK sees Cyprus as a really important regional partner. We very much welcome the fact that Cyprus is well plugged in to the region, has good relationships with Israel and its Arab neighbours, and we find it a really important partner for our diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think, in the context of where we are in the world, I think EuroMed is not a regional issue anymore. Everything is so interconnected, and risks are so well diversified, and we're in a multi-risk era at the moment. So everything is around, the power competition around energy security and technology, I think. So where actually EuroMed sits is basically the intersection of, okay, where do we really align globally in these three contexts? In addition to what you have said, geopolitically, I think energy transition, interconnectedness of the grids and infrastructure, technology and security are the critical things to focus on at the moment. Thank you.
Hello, Kalimera. Allow me to say that it is a pleasure to be here on this, in this beautiful country. This is my second time here, and I wanted to say thank you to the organizers before starting to answer the question. I am coming from Armenia, which is the region of South Caucasus, comprised of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. It is not EuroMed region, but we are quite close to this region. The complexities of geopolitics that you experience to some extent also are reflected in our region. It is again a region of great power rivalry. It is a region where we see the competition between US and Russia, where we see involvement of greater powers and regional competition between Turkey, Russia, and Iran. In recent years, we have experienced a very strong conflict, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. The war happened up until 2020. It was a frozen conflict, as you know. And in 2020, Nagorno-Karabakh was attacked by Azerbaijan and taken over as a result of the use of force and ethnic cleansing. And this is a reality on the ground, and this is something that happened in a short time span and has not been properly addressed by the international community as well. So this creates a precedent of solving conflicts by the use of force, which I believe it's not a good precedent, and this is not the way the international community should be moving forward. Another thing is, as I already mentioned, the intensification of the regional and global power competition, which is again affecting the region. And the third trend currently is more going towards the peace and reconciliation between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The extent to which this is going to work in the long run, it is still something to be seen. But as for now, we have the mediation of the United States, and that is a new introduction to the region, because previously the region has been dominated by Russia, and currently we are observing a trend of stronger Turkish influence in the region, and probably this trend will continue. And also Iran, as our northern neighbor, has its own vulnerabilities, its own concerns. And probably I stop here and I can continue on this topic so that I don't have too much time. Thank you.
Okay, bonjour. Thanks a lot for having me. This is my first time here. I very much appreciate the possibility to have interactions with the Cypriot analysts and people, because it's a rather fresh perspective for me. It's not that I have the daily capacity to interact in this context. So, to be very synthetic, you asked for the one single shift. So, to me, it's the rising of Arab diplomacies and the coming together of the Arab diplomacies in the aftermath of October 7th. It took 2 years to sort of crystallize a movement that I saw earlier with the first agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This is the return of diplomacy regionally in the Middle East. And I think, to me, the most impressive moment, the defining point, is after the Israeli strike on Doha, the summit in Qatar, and the way the Gulf leaders came to support Qatar. This is a very important shift, because don't forget that a few years ago, these countries were close to confrontation. And now there seems to be a sort of common effort, a diplomatic one, to work on a security architecture to balance the new security realities of the region that is very much dominated by Israel, and to try and think in terms of developing the region to stabilize it also economically.
Thank you very much to our panel for their opening statements. I would like to move on to our first theme, which is security alignments. And I'd like to start again with the High Commissioner on a question on how is the UK adjusting intelligence sharing and operational priorities after the Gaza escalation and the Ukraine war's spillover into the Mediterranean? Because I think you've already mentioned that this is also one of the UK's priorities, and I think it would be also very interesting to hear what the High Commissioner has to say.
Yeah, sorry, there's nothing like...
sorry, the microphone.
You ask a diplomat to talk about intelligence, we start to look like a kind of rabbit caught in the headlights, and I won't say much about that. What I will talk about, I think, is the UK's priorities in the region. I kind of feel like more or less, apologies if it sounds a little bit like I'm repeating myself. I think our core interest for the UK is stability in this region. My neighbour was talking about all the economic opportunities, the trade opportunities, the energy infrastructure opportunities, and for sure they exist, and to some extent they're being realised. But that would be much easier in a more politically stable and settled context. So that is very much what we are working towards. And as I said, I think we see the immediate priority as a situation in Gaza, and I talked about the immediate steps and the longer term steps that we see as necessary there, and British diplomacy will be very much engaged behind that. Thank you.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Ilkay, you've mentioned in your opening remarks, you've discussed security and energy, and I was wondering if you, how do you see security considerations affecting the energy markets today?
Well, it's quite a deep issue. When you look into, how actually, energy markets shift, we see actually electrons matter more than molecules now, and it's going to be the case going forward. And now that, if you look at, the total investments in 2025 in the energy market, the expected investment amount is around $3.3 trillion. And most of it is coming from China. And that is, I think telling a lot about, the energy markets, how actually China prioritizing, energy investments, renewables, and how advanced they are in battery technologies, and they're really holding most of the critical materials. That's really creating a big issue for Europe because first of all, they don't have access to critical materials, and then, they are lacking behind the technologies when it comes to, batteries, energy storage, and so forth. And I think it's quite difficult for Europe to catch up China in that respect. And that creates an energy, I think, security problem for Europe. And I have been attending a lot of conferences throughout the year in Europe, and the subject is always around, how are we going to catch up, with the technologies and advancement of technologies? How are we going to scale up the existing, or emerging technologies in Europe? How are we going to channel more capital towards there? So that's one critical problem for Europe. And I think, it's not that easy to compete with China when it comes to technologies like that. And I work with a lot of scale-ups globally, both in US and Europe. And I see, actually European scale-ups find it very difficult to get access to capital and scale up. So I think that's one critical problem that I would address. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilkay. Nvard, Ilkay made this connection about how the world is an interconnected place. So going beyond the EuroMed region, what is the geopolitical situation and the current dynamics in the South Caucasus region? And so that we explore this in a more comparative setting as well, if you like.
So, well, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, it is like a microcosm of global geopolitics. Following the Nagorno-Karabakh war, here is the situation that we have at the moment. And I wanted to show you the map, but unfortunately it was not here available. The region has been dominated mostly by Russia, and Armenia has been Russia's main partner in the region. Russia has been Armenia's security guarantor, and it was helping Armenia to balance against Azerbaijan and Turkey. However, this has changed as a result of the Nagorno-Karabakh war and Armenia's diversification policy, because Russia, which mediated the ceasefire between Armenia and Azerbaijan, actually brought also its peacekeeping troops to the remaining part of the Nagorno-Karabakh, but eventually they had to leave, and this resulted in the ethnic cleansing in which actually Russians had also their part. So following all these events, Armenia has been taking more like a diversification policy, and previously it has been dependent on Russia on its defense and security. However, currently Armenia is looking more towards European and Western countries for having greater engagement with the EU. And we also see the unprecedented presence of EU in the region, because previously for decades it has been helping the region in different ways. It has been a part of the European Eastern neighborhood, and currently, and also the EU has been making major investments both in Armenia and in Azerbaijan. Currently we have the European EUMA, which is the European Observer Mission, that has been deployed on the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It is a civilian humanitarian observer mission, but this is unprecedented because before we did not have such kind of European presence on the ground. So basically they are monitoring the border, they are giving reports to the EU, and this is a presence of EU that is also going to continue probably. Azerbaijan is against this presence, but Armenia is in favor. Other than that, we see the emergence of also new actors, and it is interesting to observe how China and India have become new actors in the region. That is, again, an unprecedented trend. Well, as I said before, Armenia was buying 99% of its weapons, let's say, from Russia. And currently, Armenia has become the largest buyer of Indian weapons, which is a new trend. And this has been happening very fast within recent years. And Armenia is the largest buyer of indigenous weapons. And at the same time, India is now the largest defense partner in terms of procurement for Armenia. This trend is continuing, and also Armenia is looking for other countries as well. France is another example that has been providing, again, weapons to Armenia, which did not happen before. So basically we see a multidimensional increase of external actors, including European and Asian. China is more involved with the region, with Georgia and with Azerbaijan. And these are very interesting trends that I can speak more about if you're interested, but maybe that is the short description. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorothée, I turn to you because my fellow Cypriots and I, very often when we discuss security, there is an elephant in the room, and that is Turkey. If you don't mind, what are Turkey's strategic and economic priorities, in your view, with regards to current affairs in the EuroMed region and perhaps beyond this region? Does it read any geopolitical shifts as a deterrence, as provocation, or something in between?
So, yeah, this question is a very structured one, very elaborate one. So we see the elephant is the animal that all the Cypriot people have their eyes caught by. I think Turkey's priority in the region is to consolidate its footprint because it has invested a lot, especially in the Middle East, and now in the Mediterranean also as a maritime space. I think one thing that you have to take into account within the power balances inside Turkey is the re-coming together of the army, the military sector, and the government, the state. They were at odds for quite a long time. And after the failed coup of 2016, Tayyip Erdogan finalized the movement of, retaking power, regaining the hand over the military. So it's very important to understand that they're working together now. And they're also working together with the economic sector, the private sector. The Turkish state is very much in leadership in order to help the Turkish companies to export more abroad, to set foot beyond the Turkish border. So there is a soft power plus hard power common effort to consolidate Turkey's footprint in the Middle East and also now in the Mediterranean, because as you know, it extends until Libya. And I think the driving priority is to become a structuring power in the region, not only in the East Med, but more globally in the Med, but also in the Caucasus and globally. I mean, they have invested a lot on multilateral institutions. They are very active inside the UN system. With the BRICS, as you know, they officially applied. They're with the Shanghai group, so they're very much committed to all multilateral clubs that they can. But in the region, they want to become a structuring power because the ultimate objective is to keep the autonomy that they've been working on for 2 decades. They want to defend Turkish interests, nationally defined. They don't want to be, they don't have to compromise with NATO or with the EU on the defining of Turkish national interest. But one important point is that I think Cyprus was actually really featured on the list of Turkish national interests, strictly defined, you know, which is a strange legacy of historical ruptures that they had. But I think these interests, this national interest, can be redefined, and they are constantly now, they have entered a dynamic. So we had opportunity to discuss Turkey's vision, outlook on Cyprus recently, and I think what to me matters the most is that I've seen it evolving, like really going through up and downs, very different perspectives for the last 2 decades. So I think there is room for bargaining, and this is very important. And then to the second point of the question, which was how do they see shifts in the region, provocation? Can you just read it again?
Yes, does it read geopolitical shifts as a deterrence, a provocation, or is it something in between?
Okay, so my answer is they read it as a threat. There is a very strong psychology of a threat perception in Turkey. This is, again, inherited from a history from the starting of the Ottoman Empire collapsing into the emergence of this very, you know, tiny space that they perceive as being constantly under threat, its borders being constantly challenged. So the counter-obsession is to, of course, being revisionist on most of the Turkish borders, including in Syria, where, you know, you have Turkish troops beyond the Turkish border. And some of my Turkish colleagues would say, when a Turkish soldier crosses the border, he never comes back. So that's a very interesting statement. So I think the Turks have now several threat perceptions, and it's evolving. One very important is on the Black Sea. They know that the Black Sea is going to become a confrontation space between Russia and NATO, where they have to take a part. After the Russian-Ukraine war, they will have to choose on what side they will be, and it's extremely complicated, I think, for NATO to ensure that Turkey considers that its interests lie more with NATO than with Russia. This is not obvious because they have a nexus of economic commonalities with Russia. Second threat perception, and my Turkish colleagues keep on insisting on that, is the Aegean. It's like now, and I think it's also a way to divert our attention from the Black Sea, actually. This is like overplaying threat in the Aegean, talking about Greece becoming aggressive again towards Turkey. But the new threat perception that emerged after October 7th, and that's building up very quickly in the Turkish psychology, is Israel. And this is also where Cyprus has a role to play, because now the division of the island could be envisaged, they could contemplate it in the broader confrontation of forces and the need to strike a balance with Israel in the future. So as you may know, we've worked on the reinvestment of the Turks in the northern part of the island recently. And I think there is a dangerous trend now into remilitarizing the issue of Cyprus. The strategic status of Cyprus is changing now in the new geopolitical context.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorothée.
Thank you, not thank you.
So, going on into a question that's more related to diplomacy in the region. We've seen the recent changes in Syria. And while the al-Shara government claims to represent all of its people, we still see that it has trouble exercising effective control over its own territory, with conflicts still breaking out in various parts of the country. How can we actually explain the decision from a diplomatic point of view to welcome al-Shara, a former Hayat Tahrir al-Sham jihadist turned political animal, and recognize his government on equal footing in the international community. And I'd like to begin with the High Commissioner again, please. The microphone.
Really important interests are engaged in Syria. Regional stability, the humanitarian situation after so many years of conflict and suffering, terrorism, the complete removal of the Assad era chemical weapons. So, like I said, there are big interests there, and those interests are best served in the UK view by helping to stabilize the situation in Syria through an inclusive political transition, through humanitarian aid that will allow the economy and the population to recover, and through supporting the complete elimination of chemical weapons through OPCW efforts. So, that is my justification for why it's important that that the UK and other countries are active in trying to stabilize Syria and to support an inclusive political transition in the country.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Dorothée, how do we explain, how do we understand Turkish involvement in Syria from this perspective?
Well, I think I'd like to answer your first question. Actually, I think it's good that Al-Shara is a political animal. I think that's the good news, that the jihadis turned into a sort of a Syrian nationalist, especially as Syria does not exist at the moment. Its territory is still very fragmented. There is a strong external presence still on the ground. So, and Al-Shara has to try to have all the goodwill come together in order to help him rebuild the country, stabilize the borders, then rebuild the country. So he has to focus on economic reconstruction of Syria before having any new ambition that would go beyond the strict borders of the country. So I think this is actually good news. That I don't know how the jihad is transformed into that, but I think it's the result of the thorough destruction of the country after 20 years of civil war. So we should not forget that he's coming to power, which looked like, a surprise. It was actually the result of the long-term decline of the structure of power of the Syrian state. And so I think the priority is to restore states in the region in terms of stability. If you come to the Palestinian question, my answer will be the same. I think it's important to have strong states, including Arab states in the region. Otherwise, the instability goes on forever. I think the stakes for us Europeans in Syria is to be able to find some role to make us useful in a picture where, of course, other regional countries are dominant. For the moment, there's a standoff between Israel and Turkey. We talked about it. There is this contribution of the Gulf states. The economic contribution will be absolutely super important for the future of Syria. And I think the West has difficulties finding somewhere to intervene, finding their new role into this equation. So the news is that the future security architecture, the future political architecture of the region lies on the wills of the states themselves, of local actors themselves.
Thank you. Nvard, what would you identify as the goals of Turkey in the South Caucasus, and what implications, if any, can this have for the Eastern Mediterranean?
Going back to the points that I made earlier, so currently there is the peace process that is ongoing, And at the same time, there is a demand from Azerbaijan to provide, from Armenia, to provide a land connection between Azerbaijan and Turkey. If you look at the map, and I'm sorry it's not there, Turkey and Azerbaijan are divided by Armenia. Basically, Armenia is standing in between the two countries. This has been not a new, but a very age-old ambition and strategy of Turkey to have a land connection with Azerbaijan and to extend its influence beyond, in the region and beyond the region. And basically, Azerbaijan's claim of the so-called Zangezur corridor, which Armenia does not accept because it is perceived as a territorial claim and as territorial encroachment against Armenians' territorial integrity and sovereignty. They keep pushing for this narrative of the Zangezur corridor that basically implies a road connection between Nakhichevan, that is Azerbaijan's exclave bordering Turkey, and Turkey proper through Armenia, and they keep insisting that Armenia should give them a passage that is not supposed to be controlled even by Armenia, basically taking a territorial expansion approach in that framework. Iran has offered an alternative, Aras corridor, so that they can have the connection. They also have the connection through Georgia, but they are not happy even with the road that Armenia has proposed. Armenia has always said that we don't mind opening communications in the region. We are for peace, and the Armenian government has this peace agenda, peace narrative, and it keeps pushing that forward. And Armenia says we don't mind giving a road through Armenia that can connect these two countries, but it is our sovereign territory, and we're going to have a control over that. So the deal that was signed in Washington on August 8 between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Donald Trump and the United States stipulates that there should be a passage through Armenia, but it also very clearly indicates that there has to be a respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of Armenia. Coming to your question about Turkey, Turkey has many times said that it supports Azerbaijan's Zangezur corridor and that it is a very important strategic project for Turkey. Basically, if that happens, this is going to give Turkey a greater expansion towards the South Caucasus, towards the Caspian Sea, which is rich in resources, and further towards the Central Asia. And when we're looking at Turkish policy towards those regions, it is very clearly aiming towards greater influence, both economic and perhaps military to some extent in the future. At the same time, this is going, of course, to increase Turkey's strength as a state, Turkey's influence beyond the region. How this is going to affect the Eastern Mediterranean, I think a greater influence of Turkey elsewhere is going to give less leverage probably to EU and to NATO over Turkey, and Turkey is going to be a more independent player in that sense. It is also going to be more assertive in its geopolitical game with other neighbors, including Cyprus, including Greece. So this can have longer-term implications. Currently, the peace process, as I said, is ongoing, and Turkey is more favorable to opening the borders. We're also hoping that the region will be unlocked, and it is, of course, a good thing to have open borders rather than closed borders. Armenia has been having closed borders for over 30 years with Turkey and Azerbaijan. It would be good for Armenia if we have open trade, if we have good relations, and Turkey seems to be now considering the opening of the border, which is a good sign, a positive sign. But at the same time, we have to be very careful and attentive to the far-reaching geopolitical implications, which are the underlying of this entire geopolitical mix.
Thank you.
As well, by the way, I'm Turkish, so maybe I have a right to comment on what has been discussed so far. I totally agree with your comments about the threats in the region. So thank you for highlighting them. But these are not, threats that emerged recently. I mean, we always had these threats because Turkey sits in a very strategically important location. Everywhere around us is almost problematic. We have been trying to be the balancing fact in the region, and we have been very transactional in all of our, communication with the surrounding countries. So we are a NATO member. We're trading with EU. We're trying to balance, the Syria issue from the beginning. So we have millions of Syrians in Turkey, and we have been trying to really, accommodate them for years. With the new state of Syria, a discussion was going on that, most of the Syrians would go back to their countries, thinking that it is more stabilized now. It didn't happen. So Turkey has, yes, a lot of threats and a lot of balls to handle, really, to manage all these complex issues. And I think we are trying to, of course, defend our, personal objectives, whereas, trying to balance the security issues, the peace in the region. So we're being very, fundamental in terms of, what has been done between Russia, Ukraine, what Syria has gone through, the reconstruction of Syria. Turkey has been very, instrumental. So I agree with your comments. It's quite important, but I think there are many angles to be discussed from Turkey's point of view as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And indeed, there are always different angles, and depending on also how the different perspective, taking into consideration the priorities of each actor involved as well. This has been a lovely conversation. There are quite many more questions actually to ask, especially about energy and energy infrastructure, but also the spillover of other conflicts in the region. But unfortunately, time is up. I'd like to thank our esteemed speakers for sharing invaluable insights to the Cyprus Forum, and I'd like everyone to join me in giving them a round of applause. Thank you very much. And yeah. Just yes, one.
Thanks very much. Sorry. Thanks very much. Really fascinating discussion. Sorry to push for questions, but I'm a journalist and that's why I came. I have 2 questions. I'm going to ask you, Kai, first about the technology security and energy that's interconnecting and driving a lot of state interests. As we're in Cyprus, I really do want to ask, though, this division of the island, how is that an obstacle and an opportunity to those 3 interests of energy, technology, and security? Like, how can that either block or encourage greater collaboration on those 3 areas? And if I could ask the High Commissioner a question. Regarding the US proposal on Gaza, given your own experience in Bosnia, how likely is it that this peace plan will be received well by the relevant actors, considering that there was not much inclusivity in the preparation of the peace plan? And which is something that we also saw in Bosnia to a great extent, and we see the ramifications of that today. Thank you very much.
I'll quickly start. Thank you for the question. It's a very deep question, and I need to say, I'm not as expert as my dear panelists here. I'm coming from an investment world, so I would like to approach your question from, capital flows and, what I see as trends in the energy market. From Turkey's point of view, Turkey is really trying to be at the center of energy transitions, both for LNG, now hydrogen is a big issue, in the region as well. So all of these corridors can only be implemented with a joint force, because these needs high capital flows, and you need really multilaterals, all countries coming together, really structuring deals together to make these possible, because at the end of the day, these projects take a lot of time, a lot of capital, and when you think of, when you think one country to get hold of it, it's almost impossible. So I see these issues very complex and very interdependent. So I see a big opportunity for Cyprus to unite on this, to really be the corridor for hydrogen, LNG, whatever energy transition corridors are, to really make this possible. But I know there are many political issues going around that, so I don't know how possible it is. But from a investment perspective, or for the future of the world, for meeting net zero targets, for me, there's only way. It's collaboration and uniting of forces in terms of capital, governance, and going forward. That's the only way I see.
Thank you for your question, which was how likely is it that the US plan will be received well. It's got a lot of international support, including from many Arab countries. So I think that's positive. We've been locked in a really bad situation for far too long, and this is an opening. And in these circumstances, where there is an opening, the right thing to do is to seize the opportunity. And work as hard as you can to realize the potential for peace and stabilizing the situation. So it's positive that the plan exists. It's positive that it's got lots of international support, and we very much hope that all the relevant actors will agree to it and line up behind it.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for questions, but you're more than welcome to network with our speakers around the forum. Thank you all for coming. Thank you again, esteemed panel and guests.